Okay, children, that's all of us. We're ready to head for the Latin America nation of Costa Rica, a country filled with virgin rainforest.
Whippy!
History happened everywhere. Hello, my name is Pete Goddard and I'm here in the HHE studio with the dirty old route to my beautiful flower. It's Mr. Ryan Weir.
That's right, and I need feeding with nutrients.
You are always begging for nutrients, Ryan. I'm sick of it.
Fertilise me, Pete. Fertilise me.
I'm fertilising nothing, my friend. So last week, the Derzolation gave us, for episode 96, Botany in Costa Rica between 1603 and 1868. So, Ryan, let a million flowers bloom. What are you bringing? What is blossoming in the world of knowledge?
Well, Pete, crop a load of this, because things are about to get botanical. Because today's tropical episode of HHE is dense in exotic shrubbery. We're heading back to the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries to find greenery in one of the greenest places on Earth. We'll discover why some strange fruits are best left alone. We'll dig up some brilliant botanists, including an old friend of the show, Pete, and we're going to discover why knowing about botany might make you the most popular person at the Costa Rican party. And finally, we'll take a jungle journey in the company of a national treasure. Welcome to the place of the Ticos. Welcome to the rich coast. Welcome to Costa Rica!
Well, Ryan, you had me right up to treasure, at which point I was back to reality and my expectations of you, Ryan.
I was so pleased with that.
Well, botany, plants can be exciting. I'm looking forward to knowing what you have to offer. But first of all, why don't you tell us where we are?
Yeah, it's a good question. Where is Costa Rica? Well, it's in Central America, Pete, not South America, which is where I thought it was. It's also not an island, which is also what I thought it was.
I would have guessed also probably both of those things, so I will not make fun of you.
Yeah, no, it's Central America, but only just, because if you go any further south, you're going to hit Panama, and then you reach South America, so it's really low down in the Central America.
That's sort of America's waste, isn't it?
That sounds awful.
Waste as in the sort of body part, not it's a terrible waste.
Yeah. The word Costa, Pete, refers to the country's 800 miles, 1,300 kilometres of coast, which borders the Caribbean Sea to the east and the Pacific Ocean to the west, both of which get their fair share of Costa Rican islands. There are 30 main islands and hundreds of smaller ones, perhaps the most notable being Cocos Island, which is located 555 kilometres away from Costa Rica, deep into the Pacific, and is so small that visitors are given just 5-hour window to visit the place before they're then kicked out.
Wow, what is there?
Well, some say you're only allowed to go there for a short time to conserve the wildlife, but others say it's to dissuade treasure hunters who claim it's home to hidden pirate loot.
Ah, is it not possibly that there's not that much there?
Except treasure.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I shall be taking my shovel forthwith.
Yeah, let's go to Cocos Island for 5 hours. Now, the mainland of Costa Rica is divided into 7 provinces, the most notable being San Jose, which is home to the country's capital city, San Jose. Not to be confused with San Jose, the Dionne Warwick song that everyone wants to know the way to.
Do you know the way to San Jose? Ba, 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 da, ba, 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 da, ba.
Yes. In total, Costa Rica covers an area of around 20,000 square miles.
That means nothing to me. What is that in francs?
That's 51,000 square kilometres, Pete.
That means nothing to me. What is that in francs?
Well, Pete, it's about 1/10 the size of France.
Ooh.
It's a tropical country. It's filled with stunning beaches, over 100 volcanoes, but it's best known perhaps for its lush rainforests. There are national parks there which cover around 25% of the entire country.
Wow.
And it contains more than 500,000 species of wildlife, Pete, some unique to the country.
That's a lot of wildlife.
Not only is Costa Rica one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, it's one of the most ecologically protected places too, with bans in place on recreational hunting and deforestation.
Oh, jolly good job too.
Indeed. 99% of the country's energy is produced entirely by a combination of wind, solar, and especially hydropower.
Oh, nice.
The predominant religion is Roman Catholicism.
I wonder why that might be, Ryan.
Something I'm sure you might tell us about in the history section. The currency, Pete, is the Costa Rican colon.
I think the Dursley will have fun with that.
Yeah. And the national animal is the white-tailed deer, which is a deer that can run at 30 miles an hour, Pete. That's 48 kilometres an hour, and jump as high as 8 feet, 2.5 metres. And in one single leap can jump around 30 feet, 9.1 metres.
In a period in which the Olympics is happening, it's knowing that animals can be so much better at all those things than us is always an interesting thought. I
don't know about giving them a javelin, though, or table tennis.
Come on, a chimp playing table tennis, I'd pay money to watch that.
That's true. Yeah. Now, Costa Rica doesn't have a national flag.
What?
It has 2!
No way!
Yeah, and they're pretty much identical, both consisting of 5 horizontal stripes, Pete: blue, white, double red, white and blue. But one of them features the national coat of arms. That's what distinguishes it from the other one. It's a golden picture frame with an illustration of 7 stars above 3 smoking volcanoes surrounded by oceans on either side, with 2 merchant boats flying tiny versions of the flag, making Costa Rica one of the few examples of countries that feature a flag of their flag on their flag.
Oh, flagception.
Flagception, yeah. Now, Peter, do you want a national anthem?
I do.
Well, good, because I'm going to play it for you now. It's called Noble Fatherland, Your Beautiful Flag. Yes, there's a flag in the national anthem. And it sounds a little something like this.
This is more March in the Park than March to War, I would say.
Very true. Now, Peter, this anthem was composed in 1852. It was composed by a 22-year-old called Manuel Maria Gutierrez. Turns out he was the director of the Costa Rican military band at the time, and he was ordered by the president to compose a tune that would impress some diplomats who were due to visit the country in a couple of days. Now, there's an urban myth that says that he wrote it while sitting in a prison cell because he refused to write something in less than 24 hours, but in reality, he didn't complain and he composed it at home over 3 or 4 days, and he even enlisted some help from a friend of his, an adventurer called Gabriel Pierre Lafond de Lessay.
I have to say, even with your caveat, still quite a stressful experience. Could you write the song that's going to represent our entire nation at the age of 22 in the next couple of days, please?
Now, sadly, the anthem pretty much was forgotten after being played for the first time to those diplomats, but eventually it resurfaced and was officially adopted in 1853. Over the years, Pete, a few attempts have been made to make a new one, but nothing's been chosen yet, and so this version remains the anthem to this day.
Once it's settled, it's very difficult to change. I would love to change our national anthem, but it's just hard. It's settled, isn't it?
There you go. How about that?
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Costa Rica facts!
I look forward to these. Fact me.
Costa Rica is home to death apples.
They sound nice. I'll take a dozen, please.
Now, if you are wandering through the jungle, Pete, and you get a bit peckish, you got to be careful what you eat, because there is a tree which holds the Guinness World Record for being the most dangerous tree on Earth. It is called the Manchineel tree, and it is so notoriously dangerous that signs are placed near them to warn people to stay away.
What, is it dangerous because you fall out of it easily, or what?
It's because every single part of the tree, Pete, is toxic. The bark, the leaves, the fruits, and the sap.
Right.
Yeah, it's so toxic, in fact, that one drop of the sap can burn through your skin like acid, with apparently frequent cases of people sheltering under the tree during like these tropical rainstorms, suffering severe burns because the rainwater washes the sap off the tree onto their skin and causes them excruciating pain and blisters.
That is a horrible trick of nature, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's raining, I'll seek shelter under this tree.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I'm on fire with tree napalm.
Well, that's okay. We can drying ourselves off and having a little bonfire, right? Don't do that, because apparently by burning the wood, you get toxic smoke in your eyes, and some people have even lost their eyesight from that.
Right. This tree does not like humans.
It definitely doesn't, no. And in fact, one of the humans that it likes the least was a Spanish conquistador called Juan Ponce de Leon, who in 1521 was hit by an arrow that had been dipped in Manchineel sap, and he died of his wounds a painful couple of days later.
I'm sure the sap was important, but being hit by an arrow is, in and of itself, a rough deal.
It's a pretty rough deal, yeah, you're right. But it's the fruit, Pete, that people are most warned to avoid, and that's because people are curious to try fruits off trees.
So in summary, you're saying I've come under a tree, it set me on fire with its burning sap, and I've gone, I'm going to eat some of this.
Yeah.
So I'm peckish at the end of that. That tree has got some lovely looking fruit on it.
The fruit can't be that bad, right?
I've learned nothing.
Well, look, at just 1 or 2 inches wide, it resembles a small green apple. And they're sweet smelling. So you could be easily fooled into thinking that you could snack upon one. But the reality is that it will cause you hours of agony if you do, potentially death, with just one single bite. They're a fruit that Christopher Columbus, no less, once called manzanilla de la muerte, or the little apple of death.
Ooh.
I found one article from the year 2000 which reported that a radiologist called Nicholas Strickland had stumbled upon one of these trees and decided to eat one of the fruits, and just moments after taking a bite, she noticed a strange peppery feeling in her mouth.
This is spicy. Could be nice.
This quickly progressed to a burning, tearing sensation and only got worse, leading to the point that she could barely swallow because of excruciating pain and the feeling of a huge lump in her throat.
All in all, that is a tree to be avoided, I think it's fair to say.
Unless you are an iguana, because apparently the fruit isn't poisonous to them and they happily snack away on them without any worries.
That's the evolutionary arms race in action. Tree's gone, look at me, I'm so toxic. And then an iguana comes rocking up and goes, very nice, thank you very much.
So my theory is, right, wait for the iguana to eat one of these, or at least chew it first, and then get your fingers in the iguana's mouth, pull that out, and then eat that. Or just eat the iguana.
You think the iguana is in some way de-poisoning the apple?
Well, clearly, yeah. How else could it work?
I'm going to just eat the iguana. I think that was a much safer option, to be honest.
Yeah, wait till it eats all the apples, and then you have apple flavour iguana.
Like a pig with an apple in its mouth.
Yeah.
An iguana with an apple of death in its mouth.
Right, but look, Pete, talking of death, being a botanist in Costa Rica is a dangerous profession.
I don't doubt it.
Now, Costa Rica is, Pete, a mecca for botanists. Hundreds of researchers head there every year to root around looking for cool new plants. But finding flowers and looking at leaves is not always an easy life, because jungle life is full of danger, Pete, as you might imagine. In 1986, a Malaysian PhD student in botany died aged 24 while doing a tropical studies field course in Costa Rica. Basically, he was out walking through the jungle, he fell into a crevasse, he became stuck and was then attacked by killer bees. When his body was finally recovered, he'd sustained 8,000 stings.
Oh my goodness. That is not what you expect when I'm going to do my PhD in Costa Rica. It'd be fun, tropical, lovely. Avoid the manzanilla, I'll be fine.
Just watch out for the killer bee crevasses.
Oh, poor guy, you shouldn't laugh, but holy cow, what bad luck is that?
Isn't it? Anyway, there you go. Costa Rica facts.
Crikey, that's, you can end on an upbeat note there. Well done.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Ryan.
How do you spell Rodrigo Chavez Rebels?
Well, who's that?
Well, he's the president of Costa Rica. I'm writing him a letter.
Why?
Well, I was thinking he might be interested in twinning Costa Rica with Croydon.
Oh, okay. Why?
Well, because then we can build a mutually beneficial relationship. I mean, Costa Rica and Croydon both have a lot in common with each other.
Ryan, Costa Rica is a place of natural beauty filled with lush green rainforests and beautiful creatures not found anywhere else in the world. And Croydon
is a place of natural beauty, filled with lush green rainforests and beautiful creatures not found anywhere else in the world.
Is it though?
No, but Rodrigo Chavez Rebels, the president of Costa Rica, doesn't know that.
Oh, I see.
In fact, I bet he's never been to Croydon in his life.
Well, probably not, no.
So, I'm going to send him this letter and get us an invite to go visit Costa Rica. Then, by the time he comes to Croydon and realises it's nothing at all like where he's from, it'll be too late, because we'll have had a free holiday.
Ryan, that is actually not a bad idea. Let's do it.
Great! Now, how do you spell Rodrigo Chavez Rebels?
Just put Sir.
Well, okay. And is that 1 R or 2?
It's 1, Ryan. Goes just after the U.
Nice! All right, Pete, I am done with Costa Rica facts. Why don't you tell me some history facts?
I will tell you some history facts. I'm going to start in pre-colonial times.
Yes.
In pre-colonial times, Ryan, the area where Costa Rica is now was an area described a little bit dismissively as the intermediate area.
Okay. Just skip over it, basically.
Well, no, what that means is it lies between two areas that are basically much more famous in sort of historical anthropological circles, right? So much bigger state-like civilizations. You have Mesoamerica to the north, which is the Olmecs, your Aztecs and your Mayans. I'm sure of those are all familiar to you. If you go to the south, you've got the Central Andes, home of the Inca. And in the middle, the intermediate area. So, yeah, it doesn't get a lot of press because it's basically not these big states, the Incas, the Mayas, the people we think of when we think, let's be honest, cities of gold, but by just smaller communities, chieftains, villages, and it just doesn't have the punch, if you like, of these bigger states that were to either side of them. But before these guys, there was, in the beginning, early man, of course. There
Hooray!
was hurrah, right? There were hunter-gatherers between 19,000 to 10,000 years BCE. It was believed there were small groups of early man wandering around, hunting and eating the various foods available, which included giant sloths, which has got to be some of the easiest meals you can find, right? Mastodons, which seems like a much harder-earned meal.
Yeah.
And giant armadillos.
Wow, that's quite the menu, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go to a restaurant, what would you pick?
Well, never mind a restaurant. If I was out hunting and someone said, should we go and hunt the mastodon or the giant sloth? I know which group I'd be joining, put it that way.
You're going to need a big old tin opener, aren't you, for an armadillo?
Yeah, there's a lot of effort involved. The sloth seems like, in every possible conceivable way, the easiest meal to be had, doesn't it?
You could put it in some hot water and have a sloth broth.
Oh dear. Now, 12,000 BCE or thereabouts, people begin to settle down. So they find evidence of this in the Revantazon hydroelectric project. So you mentioned, actually, I think that hydroelectric was a major thing. So when they have these big projects, archaeologists come in and dig up things so that the stuff isn't lost. And in this project, they found 66 human settlements dated to around 12,000 BCE. So that suggests that people were settling down around that time.
12,000 BCE. What a world that must have looked like.
Exactly so. So one of our problems is that Costa Rica as a country now kind of fell between two stools, as I mentioned. So the northern tip is kind of Mesoamerica, and the south is what's known as the Isthmo-Colombian area, which is not easy to say, let me tell you, which is characterized by people talking the Chibchan languages. And basically, we've got a bunch of tribes, a bunch of villages, chieftains, but not really states or the sort of big cultures that we have to the north and the south. You've got tribes like the Corabiches and the Nahuatl tribes. They were well known for their crafts. They live in the highlands. The Chibcha and the Diquis tribes were goldsmiths, notably.
I've got to say, there is a whole bunch of conquistadors listening to this going, goldsmiths, you say? Tell me more.
Yes. Once upon a time, I think, is the problem there. So these tribes, they lived and loved and got on with lives until September 18th, 1502, when who should stumble upon the place? It's only Christopher Columbus on his fourth voyage.
Of course it is.
Yes, this can only possibly end well for everybody. I think you can agree. Now, 20 years later, 1524, we see the first Spanish colony in Costa Rica. It's a place called Villa Bruceas. And Costa Rica, despite having a name that means rich coast, you mentioned Costa before, Rica is rich, it becomes actually a bit of a backwater in the Spanish colonial world, but not sufficiently backwater that it doesn't result in the devastation of the native population.
Of course.
So in 1569, the population was about 120,000, and it was down to about 10% of that by 1611.
Wow.
So the early 19th century saw Spain taken over by Napoleon, so back in Europe. This is the interesting thing about South America, that European doings have quite a big impact on what goes on in South America and Central America. So the Spanish colonies see this as a good opportunity to have a little bit of a revolt. So in 1821, Costa Rica joins Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador and Guatemala in a joint declaration of independence from Spain.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Because you can't really do it on your own, but if you all get together, then you're a much bigger force.
Yeah, you're a much bigger force, and basically back home they've got bigger fish to fry. So like, anyway, we're independent, enjoy your problems back there.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of jockeying for position, and the area of Costa Rica becomes part of a larger independent entity called the Federal Republic of Central America.
That's a long name.
It is a long name, and Costa Rica doesn't like it. So in 1838, Costa Rica splits again to become its own independent republic. Now, to give you some idea of how loosey-goosey things were down there in this time, in 1856, William Walker, an American guy, basically, decides to privately invade
Privately invade?
Yeah, he just launches his own invasion on his own recognizance. He lands in the neighbouring nation of Nicaragua, proclaims himself president, and he tries to invade Costa Rica from there. They just kick him right back out again. That gives you a rough idea of like what a free-for-all you've got going on at this time.
Wait, was he on his own? It's just
no,
him,
he had others. It wasn't
a sword.
But it was him and a bunch of mercenaries, right? So it wasn't a nation state event. He was just like, I'm going to invade.
Oh, okay. I declare invasion.
Now, 1869 sees elections in Costa Rica. Right, so that's early. 1869, elections in Costa Rica, which starts a period of democracy that is in quite some contrast to a lot of the upheaval you see in the ex-colonies elsewhere.
Okay.
In fact, there have only been 2 small periods of violence in Costa Rica. There was a dictatorship between 1917 and 1919, and then 1948 there was a 44-day civil war. But other than that, it's been pretty peaceful. And in fact, the winners of the Civil War created a new constitution in 1953, and that included abolishing the army. So since then, they've been one of the very few nations that has no standing army at all.
Wow. I mean, that is quite incredible, isn't it? That you don't have your own army. I guess they're unconcerned about either being invaded or getting pulled into any larger scale conflict.
I guess so, and it's been pretty peaceful, so I guess it works for them. Now, economically, they had a bit of a hiccup. In 1978, they were relying on banana and coffee exports, and what happened was coffee prices dropped, and the next year the price of oil jumped, which caused an economic crisis, unsurprisingly. So there's a big leap in poverty, the devaluation of the currency, but they get back on the road to recovery, and they've since transformed their economy a bit. So now, bananas and coffee are still important, but there's been a massive rise in tourism, which you might expect,
of course.
But also
botanists.
Well, yeah, there's a huge queue of botanists despite the killer bee situation. Actually, Costa Rica is the most visited nation in Central America.
Oh, wow.
But perhaps more surprisingly, it's become a bit of a technology hub. Microsoft, Motorola, Intel, they've all established operations in the area, and the country's been called by some the Silicon Valley of Latin America.
That's amazing.
Now, one economic outlook I read said the region currently enjoys macroeconomic stability with good forecasts. So, and I love to do this on our podcast, it looks like Costa Rica could have a rosy future.
Good on you, Costa Rica.
Well done.
Costa Rica! Hooray! Okay, the ayes have it. The rainforests are hereby proclaimed protected land. Next up, Representative Santiago proposes to disband the army. Hooray! Okay, well, the ayes have it. The army is disbanded. Next up, Representative Sanchez proposes free ice cream for everyone.
Yes, free ice cream for everyone.
Hooray! Motion passed.
So, Ryan, we know where we are, we know what happened there, but what the hootin' heck is botany?
It's a really good question, Pete. And I thought, like a lot of people are going to probably have an idea of what botany is, but for those people that don't, and just because I thought it was interesting to look into it, I thought I would pose the question, what is botany?
It's a bay in Australia.
It is a bay, yeah. I did the wrong research. No, the answer is the scientific study of plants. Find a new flower, study it, give it a name, job done. Easy.
Easy. Plus, if you get the right botanicals, you can make your own gin.
That's very true. Now, it is an essential science, and it helps us understand the role that plants play in our global ecosystem. Without knowing that, we'd just be looking at plants going, what is that green thing? What does it do?
It's a mystery. We'll never know.
We'll never know, yeah.
Someone invent a discipline.
Well, look, becoming a botanist, though, isn't easy. You have to have at least a bachelor's degree in some sort of plant-related science, but many botanists go on to pursue a master's degree or a doctorate, so lots of professors out there. As you might expect, there's a lot of field work required. You can't just sit in an office somewhere. You've got to get out there and look where the plants are.
I've heard it's dangerous.
It is indeed. So as a botanist, you have to love being outdoors. You also have to be academically minded. You have to write scientific journals, and you have to present your findings, often in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people. Many botanists specialize in the study of just certain plants, right? They don't study all plants, while others remain generalists.
Just plants. I'll do plants, whatever.
They take jobs as science teachers or college professors. More recently, there's been an uptick in the number of botanists that take work as private consultants, working for environmental agencies or agricultural companies or biotech firms. Lots of those need botanists to help work out what their next medicine's going to be or their next product that they're going to put to market. The first known botanist, though, Pete, was a Greek philosopher called Theophrastus, who was born in 371 BCE. During his life, he wrote several works chronicling and classifying various plants. He wrote a book called Historia Plantarum, Inquiry into Plants. He wrote about the impacts of seasonal changes on plants. He wrote about the various pests and diseases of plants, and he was also the first person, Pete, to determine that by counting the rings of a tree trunk, you could measure its age.
Ooh, nice. That's quite the insight.
Yeah, exactly. But there have been other notable botanists over the years, Pete. People like Dutch scientist Jan Ingenhousz, who in the 18th century, he discovered that light is essential for plants to produce oxygen in a process which he called photosynthesis.
I call it that too. We've got so much in common, me and Ingenhousz.
An American botanist called Luther Burbank, he was in the 19th century, and he developed over 800 varieties of various flowers, fruits and vegetables. Norman Borlaug, who in the 20th century, he developed disease-resistant wheat varieties, which went on to save millions of people from starvation. And friend of the podcast, Joseph Banks. Do you remember him?
Oh, Joseph Banks. He was very generous with his accommodation, as I recall.
He was. You might recall he travelled with Captain James Cook on his voyage to Australia in 1760s. Yeah. And he collected over 30,000 plant specimens during his journey, many of which were unknown to science at the time, including weird and wonderful things as well, Pete, like the corpse flower, which produces the smell of rotting flesh. That must have been a fun discovery.
Worst Valentine's Day ever.
And of course, Pete, there are even botanists now in space. We've left Earth and we're looking at plants in space. Well, we're looking to see how plants grow in zero gravity, really. But they're also working on theories of what extraterrestrial plants might look like too. So there are botanists out there that are theorising on what plants might look like.
I'm ready to start terraforming at a moment's notice.
Exactly. The point is, Pete, botany is not merely the study of plants, but it is a wild and wonderful journey of endless discovery in a universe of green.
Nice. Well, thank you very much. I found that very interesting. Thanks, botanists.
Thanks, Joseph Banks. Thanks.
Professor, it's good to have you back from your latest expedition.
Thank you. It's nice to be home.
Now, without further ado, we are very excited to see what plants you have discovered.
Great. Well, look, I think you're going to be very pleased with what I found.
Excellent. Let's see what you've got.
Okay. Well, look, first off, there's this little guy, the Mimosa pudica. Its leaves do something truly amazing.
Ooh, cure cancer?
Well, no.
Does it prevent the common cold?
Also, no.
Alleviate sunburn?
No.
Well, what does it do then?
Well, when touched, the leaves fold inward and droop.
And
no other plant does that. Amazing, eh?
Oh, amazing, yes. Do you have anything else?
Yes, I do. Let me introduce you to Socratea exorita, also known as the walking palm.
Ah, so named because it can help patients with mobility issues?
No, because the roots of this species extend several feet above the ground, so well, it looks like it's walking.
And
no other plant does that. Amazing, eh?
Yes, amazing. Look, Professor, when Pharmaco saw fit to sponsor your botany expedition, it was kind of in the hopes that you might discover a plant that was more, well, I don't want to say $1 billion cure, but $1 billion cure.
Oh, right.
So did you find anything more along that line?
No, not really, no.
I see. Well, we did invest an awful lot in this field trip, Professor. We were rather hoping for something more than droopy leaves and a leggy palm.
But they are remarkable plants, though. I mean, other botanists are going to love them.
Right, but to confirm, none of these cure cancer?
No.
Or solve seasickness?
No.
Reduces swollen ankles?
I mean, no. But I did find a nettle with a funny-shaped stamen.
And will it cure baldness?
No.
Right.
I mean, you'd need an extract from the Panax ginseng for that.
Wait, what?
Panax ginseng. It's a plant said to grow in the furthest depths of the Amazon rainforest. Supposedly, the Nahuatl tribes people swear by it, and, well, their hair is famously voluminous.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yes, but, alas, to acquire even a small sample of it would require a botanist to conduct a year-long mission into the heart of the jungle, equipped with a brand new set of expensive equipment.
Right.
And, of course, course, they would need a vast supply of cash to bribe the locals with, or something.
Yes, I think I see.
I mean, at minimum, it's a $500,000 field trip, I'd reckon.
Fine. Mission approved. See you in a year.
Yay! I mean, thank you. Alrighty, Peter. Well, look, I fear we can put this off no longer. Why don't we start by you telling us our first story of botany in Costa Rica during 1603 to 1868?
Well, I'm glad you asked me this, Ryan, because I thought this was going to be dead easy, and it was not dead easy.
It was so hard!
But I have things, so don't you worry. So I have concluded that the best use of botany, so we're talking about study of plants to understand them and understand what they do. So I have come up with the theme, Ryan, of plants used historically by Costa Ricans to become intoxicated.
Yay! Tell me more.
I will tell you more. I'm going to start with Gonzalo Fernandez de Oviedo,
who
is described as a Spanish soldier, writer, botanist,
hooray,
ethnographer and colonizer. Less good.
Less good.
So he travelled around the Caribbean and Central American region, including what is now Costa Rica, between 1492 and 1549, which is before our time period, Ryan.
I had noticed that, yes.
Yes, but he wrote a book about his travels. It's called Historia General y Natural de las Indias, or General and Natural History of the Indies, and it tells of his journeys. Now, Ryan, the first part was printed in 1535, before our time period. But I don't want to be pleased about this, but before the second part was printed, he died.
Right.
And his complete work was not published until 1851. Whack! That is in
counts.
Our time period.
That counts.
That
Move on
totally
quick.
Counts. So now, one of the things Oviedo writes about, obviously, is plants. He talks about a bunch of plants, including what is believed to be the oldest existing drawing of a pineapple.
Oh, okay. Nice.
We'll talk about, I didn't bring the pineapple today, but we'll talk about it in the verdict, because that in and of itself is quite interesting. But he also talks about another plant that was very important to the people of Costa Rica because it was used in ceremonial and shamanistic ceremonies.
Okay.
It's a plant found across the Americas, and it founded a multi-million-pound global industry.
Really?
Can you guess, Ryan, what that plant was?
Tobacco.
Correct. It was tobacco. Latin name, Nicotiana tabacum.
Nice.
And this is a plant, I've learnt, is from the nightshade family.
Isn't that also tomatoes?
Possibly, yeah.
Tomatoes are from the nightshade family as well. As a botanist, I can tell you, yes.
That will explain why in The Simpsons, Homer Simpson combines tomatoes and tobacco to make tomacco.
There you go. See, we bring you all the best facts, everyone.
Things we know about. So this plant grows about 1 metre tall, although it varies a little bit. It's got broad green leaves, and those are what you dry and smoke to become intoxicated. It produces long tubular flowers. They come in a variety of colours, white, yellow, purple, and it's actually a rather pretty plant in and of itself.
Cool. It's not illegal to grow tobacco, is it?
Not at all, no. Now, archaeological studies suggest the use of tobacco starts at least around the 1st century BC, when the Mayan people in Central America used tobacco leaves for smoking in sacred and religious ceremonies.
You can only imagine that it started one day with just them clearing out an area and then burning all of the leftovers and just getting super high on nicotine.
Yeah, that first guy went, this is nice. This bonfire is nice.
I have 3 bonfires a day.
It was when he was chain bonfiring. I just got to keep burning this stuff. Now, eventually, Christopher Columbus arrives in the area. He notices the high value that the plant is held in the locals' regard. He brought a few tobacco leaves and seeds back with him to Europe, but it wasn't immediately popularised. It didn't really catch on at that point. It was the mid-16th century when it really caught on, influenced by the likes of a French diplomat named Jean-Nicot de Villemain, who sent tobacco and seeds to Paris in 1560, and then everyone went, yeah, this is where the craze starts. So then tobacco becomes really popular. Jean-Nicot gives his name to nicotine.
Nicotine. How about that? It's named after someone. I did not know that.
Yeah, Jean-Nicot de Villemain gives his name to nicotine, which is the thing in the leaf that gives you the buzz when you smoke. So obviously the habit catches on, it spreads around the world, although today obviously it's less popular than in its heyday due to, all the cancer.
Yeah, that's a bad part of it.
There is a downside, a well-documented downside. But going back to Oviedo, he wrote about the reception of a high-ranking chief, or a cacique, in Costa Rica on August 19th, 1529. He writes, "The cacique presented a handful of rolls of tobacco about 4 inches long and the thickness of a finger, made of a certain rolled leaf and tied with fibres of pita." I couldn't exactly find out what pita was. It seems to be a plant, but there was a few different plants that seem to have the name, so I'm not sure what that is, but some stringy plant. They cultivate tobacco with great care because of the effect produced by its leaves. They light the roll at one end and smoke it like a pipe until it stops burning, which can last a whole day.
Wow, smoke it all day.
All day, right? He says, I know, by the end of it, I'm tired of it.
So sick of this. Why don't we make these smaller?
Maybe some sort of cigarette. So then he adds, from time to time, they put in the mouth the opposite extremity to the one that is lighted, very sensible, and inhale the smoke a moment and then throw it out through the mouth and nostrils. And each of the Indians I mentioned had of these rolled leaves, which they called yapaquete. So clearly this was happening back in the day. There was additional evidence of tobacco use in the area. There's a small stone sculpture about 30 centimetres high in the National Museum of Costa Rica, which is a little figure called Thinker, or also Smoker. It's a guy sitting on a stool holding what seems to be a massive cigar, which is believed to represent consumption of tobacco by a ritual specialist. I'm not sure why they think he's a ritual specialist. Could be just a rich guy who likes cigars.
Yeah.
But I guess this is the point. Tobacco wasn't just a habit that everyone had. It was a ritually important thing. It was used to celebrate a chieftain in that original quote I gave you, but it was also used by shamans in their rituals. So there's another writer about the area. He's a guy called William Gabb. He was an American paleontologist. He wrote a book called On the Indian Tribes and Languages of Costa Rica, published in 1875, 6 years after our time period. But I'm taking it because that is too close to corn.
This is a familiar theme for our research, wasn't it?
Yeah, tantalisingly close.
Yeah, despite having nearly 300 years to pick from, everything was before or after.
Right? And it's crazy. But William Gabb was kind of a jerk, actually, when he writes about it. But he says he's talking about the shamanic claim to using tobacco to control the weather. And this is a quote from his book. It says, "They also claim to bring or drive away rain. To do this, the doctor must have a pipe full of tobacco or a cigar. He goes into the open air, smokes, blows the smoke in certain directions, calling out in an imperative tone of voice, 'Rain, go to,' whatever place he may see fit to designate. Once, when prisoners between two swollen rivers, forced to wait for them to fall low enough for us to ford, one of our few means of amusement was to give one of these fellows, in our suite, a pipe full of tobacco and set him to clearing up the weather. He would go outside of our little hut and between the puffs of smoke would call, 'Rain, go to Panama, go to Chiriqui, go to Cartago,' in short, every remote place of which he happened to know the name." It took him 10 days before his efforts were crowned with success. When ultimately the blue patches did begin to appear in the sky, he had the effrontery to calmly claim it was his doing.
Well, how do we know it wasn't?
Well, I agree. Now, I don't think Mr. Gabb was a true believer in this guy's powers, but I ask you, who is the smart one here? The snarky American or the guy getting the free cigars?
Free cigars for 10 days straight.
Exactly.
That's
so I'm not
amazing.
sure Gabb was as clever as he thought he was there. But
Yeah.
so that is one example of botany. You have to understand plants if you're going to smoke them. And so tobacco is my first example of botany in Costa Rica.
Sponsored by Hunter's Cigarettes.
The cigarette of the future. Now, Ryan, if you're not a smoker, don't worry, because I've got one other plant that the people of Costa Rica used in our period to use for its intoxicating properties.
Okay.
And that is maize, or as we know it, corn, like sweet corn.
Intoxicating.
Intoxicating, not in and of itself. So Oviedo, we're back to him. He describes corn, or maize. He says, each stalk gives at least one ear, and some give out 2 or 3, and in each ear there are 200 or 300 kernels, and each spike or ear of these is wrapped around by 3 or 4 leaves or skin wrapped tightly over the kernels.
This is bonkers, isn't it? Because both tobacco and corn is so familiar to us now. To hear somebody describing it like they'd seen
Like,
it
it's
for the
most
first
amazing
time.
thing. What is this thing? It's that, and then and if you think about his challenge, how would you describe corn to somebody else
Who'd
who'd
never seen
heard
it.
of such a thing?
Yeah.
A big lump with knobs. It has the juice.
So now, Ryan, you may think of corn as just something you eat.
I do. Yeah, at the cinema bar.
Well, you're wrong, because it's also something you can make booze out of.
Really?
Yeah, the people of Costa Rica did exactly that. They would create a fermented beer-like beverage known as chicha.
Ah, chicha. I've heard of chicha.
So actually, it's apparently, from what I can make out, it seems the main reason they cultivated maize in Costa Rica in our time period was to make chicha. It wasn't to eat. It was mostly for the making of this chicha. So chicha isn't like magical like the tobacco was, but it was definitely ceremonial and definitely social. So chicha served as a form of social currency, right? So if you wanted to clear a bit of land, or you wanted to build a house, or you wanted something that, raise a barn kind of thing, if you will, for your village, you would invite everyone round to your house and say, come on, help me clear my area or raise my house. But you'd have to use chicha to lure everyone in, basically. So Gab writes this, says, on the day appointed, his neighbours unite early at his house, or at the spot designated, and work industriously until about noon. All then repair to the house, and after a good round of chicha drinking, food is served, followed by more chicha. After a while, dancing begins, and is kept as long as the chicha holds out. Sometimes the work is continued for 2 or 3 days, but always ends early in the day, the afternoon and evening being devoted to eating and especially to drinking.
And how much work is actually getting done?
Well, it looks like you start early and get done by noon. So I'm willing. All I'm saying, Ryan, is if you need a barn raising or a forest cleared, I'm here for you.
As long as I bring chicha.
Well, absolutely. I'm not coming without it. Now, I have to tell you, chicha is not a very strong alcohol. The estimate's like somewhere between 1 and 3%. But the other thing, Ryan, that might put you off a little bit is the way it's made.
Okay.
So in order to convert the starch of the maize into the sugars, dextrins and maltose, you have to chew the maize to break it down and then spit it out.
So everyone just sits around chewing on corn and then spitting it out?
It seemed to be a woman's job to make the chicha. But yeah, they would chew it up, spit it out, make this kind of paste stuff. Yeast then comes in and converts the sugars into alcohol. So I wanted to kind of know what this tasted like. I didn't find many consistent versions, but I've read it has a sour taste and a cloudy, pale yellow-white colour. I've also seen it described as slightly vinegary.
Nice. It sounds very appetising.
I know. Well, you drink what you can in these circumstances, don't you? So chicha is found across the regions, not specific to Costa Rica. But apparently, Costa Rica has become a bit of a centre of a revival for the drink, with one website I found describing it as a hub of innovation in the craft beer scene, adding, inspired by chicha's traditional brewing methods and distinctive flavours, Costa Rican breweries have crafted their own interpretations of this traditional beloved beverage. So I guess chicha's making a bit of a comeback.
Nice. So when can we try it?
Well, Ryan, I did try and buy some genuine spit-based chicha for you.
Yes.
But one of the problems with it is it does not travel. It doesn't keep very well because it's not pasteurised and all that stuff. So I couldn't get you any chicha.
Do we have to go to Costa Rica?
I think we have to now go to Costa Rica, tragically.
Hooray! Now where's my cigarettes?
All right, love. What can I get you to drink?
All right, 2 pints, please.
Okie doke. There you go. That'll be £14.
Thanks, love. Here you go, John.
Brian,
Yes, mate.
when you said you knew a Costa Rican pub that was a bit spit and sawdust, I didn't think this was quite what you meant.
How do you mean, mate?
I mean, that was disgusting.
What was disgusting?
Well, what she did.
What?
Well, she just charged you £7 a pint.
Don't worry, mate. You get used to it. Do you want to top up?
Oh, yes, please. Nice.
So, Ryan, that's my offering for Botany in Costa Rica. What do you have to bring to the table?
Well, look, for my section of the show, I thought I would take us on a literal and figurative botanical journey through the heart of Costa Rica.
Okay.
So we're cruising down the Pan-American Highway. We're weaving through the lush landscapes of the Sierra de Guanacaste. It's a region filled with rolling hills covered in dense forests, filled with the Guanacaste tree. This is Costa Rica's national tree, and it's revered not just for its beauty, but also its distinctive ear-shaped seed pods, which give it the nickname the elephant ear tree.
Ooh, are they? I assume they look like elephant ears rather than human ears.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But look, we've been cruising, Pete, for about an hour and a half now, and we have arrived at the access road to the Tenorio Volcano National Park.
Excellent. I'm sure botany isn't dangerous in a volcanic area.
No, not at all. Now, this is one of Costa Rica's newest parks, Pete. It was established in 1995, and we enter a winding section of road, and we're met with breathtaking views of grass savannas. But soon we start to ascend into what's called the middle elevations. This is a dense rainforest where the canopy is so thick it almost blots out the sun. So you can take off your sunglasses, Pete, for this bit.
Phew, that's good. I don't like wearing sunglasses.
Now, the middle elevations, Pete, are home to a stunning array of wildlife. There's jaguars, howler monkeys, and colonies of ants that build their homes in hollowed-out tree trunks. This is the result of strangler figs, a type of plant that starts their life high up in the branches of a tree and slowly sends their roots down to the ground, gradually enveloping and killing the tree and creating this hollow structure inside of them, which the ants move inside and go, "This is now ours."
Wow, I think anything with strangler in the name can't be trusted.
Indeed. Now, across the forest floor, Pete, is a carpet of ferns, and these ferns are so big that they reach up to 20 feet tall.
Wow.
Enormous ferns.
It feels prehistoric, doesn't it?
It does, and if you look underneath the ferns, you're going to find mushrooms that glow in the dark, thanks to sort of a bioluminescent chemical in their cells.
Are you sure I'm not in a video game?
But we continue on up the road, Pete. I'm driving along and we're passing shrubs and wildflowers and the Mimosa pudica. It's a plant which folds up its leaves whenever it gets touched. Very sensitive little plant.
Oh, shy.
Yeah, very shy. Oh no, don't look at me.
No, I'm not pretty. No.
Yeah, until eventually, Pete, we've got so high up this mountain that we see the landscape of Costa Rica stretching away beneath us. We're so high, in fact, that we can even see Nicaragua's Lake Cocabolca. It's 66 miles away, 105 kilometres away. But as the road continues, Pete, the view disappears and we are now surrounded in thick mist, because here at the top of the mountain we've entered into a mystical cloud forest, home to ancient towering trees draped in a type of spongy moss that is so spongy, in fact, it can absorb up to 20 times its own weight in water. Yeah, it's a lot of water.
I'll take one of those on my next hike.
Yeah, just sup from your mossy sponge. Yum, yum, yum. Now, here, Pete, there are a species of plants that don't exist anywhere else on the planet, like the poor man's umbrella, as it's called, which has leaves over a metre wide that poor people use as an umbrella.
I think it's more expensive to travel to Costa Rica and climb a mountain hours from the main settlement than it is to buy a moderately priced umbrella.
Just buy an umbrella, yeah. Now, here in this wet and humid forest, Pete, are bright and colourful flowers. They grow among the branches like bromeliads, which are part of the pineapple family, and they have leaves so deep that they can collect literally litres of water inside them. It's enough water, in fact, to make little ecosystems for insects and amphibians, like the tiny glass frog, which has skin so transparent that you can see all of its internal organs.
Oh, that sounds sweet.
Yeah. There are also over 1,400 species of orchids that live here too, with petals in every possible colour, and they range in size, Pete, from as large as 75 centimetres, that's 30 inches, these orchid leaves, to as small as 2 millimetres across. Tiny orchids. Yeah.
Pop that in your buttonhole. Have you got a buttonhole? Very expensive.
But time isn't on our side, Pete. Our journey continues. We cross over the peak and we head down back out of the cloud forest. We head into the province of Alajuela, where the road ends and we are forced to get out, and now we've got to walk. We're going to walk along a trail called the Mysteries of the Tenorio.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a 3-kilometre path of dense jungle, and it's filled with resurrection ferns. These are ferns that appear dead and dried, and they stay that way until the rain comes. And then when the rain hits them, the leaves turn green within a matter of hours.
Wow, I've had 1 or 2 houseplants like that, actually.
You've had resurrection ferns, there you go. But amongst the resurrection ferns are wild avocados and blue ginger. Now, you might think blue ginger is a ginger that is blue, but you would be wrong. Not a true ginger. It is a plant that is actually a spiderwort, and it produces intensely blue flowers. Why it's called ginger, I'll never know.
The limits of research.
Anyway, we follow this path all the way to the end. I'm getting a bit tired now, Pete, and this is time for a rest because we are met by a roaring cascade of water. This is the Celeste River waterfall, and it plunges 20 metres down into a lagoon bordered by red heliconias, also known as lobster claws.
Ooh, do they look like lobster claws?
Well, they do, yeah. Now, they look like red flowers, but they're not flowers. It's actually the leaves which have just turned red. And they stay red for months at a time. And get this, they're pollinated by hummingbirds. So here we are resting by the waterfall in this tropical lagoon with little hummingbirds flitting around us.
This kind of idyllic situation in movies usually is followed by me being eaten by something horrible.
Yeah, something nasty. Yeah. Well, we are sitting by the lagoon, and the lagoon has a rich, milky turquoise water, which is the result of sulfur and calcium carbonate minerals, which are dispersed into the river from the park's 4 volcanoes.
All right.
Anyway, here we are. We're now going to take a short walk into the jungle, and we find ourselves at the end of our journey, Pete.
Ooh.
And we are standing in front of an imposing natural wonder called Kapok 53113.
Where do they get their names from?
Now, Kapok 53113 is a type of tree called a cyberpentandra, otherwise known as a kapok tree, and this one is 53113.
Again, where do they get their naming ideas?
Yeah. In 2021, a bunch of researchers went down and followed our journey, and they measured the height of Kapok 53113, and they found that it is an incredible 48 metres tall. That's 157 feet, 2 metres tall than the Statue of Liberty.
That's enormous.
Yeah. Amazingly, though, Pete, this made it only the 5th tallest tree in Costa Rica.
Wow.
Yeah, the tallest measures 64 metres, which is like a 20-storey building or the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the higher side of it.
Right, okay, I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah. But while the tree is not the tallest in Costa Rica, Pete, it is, in fact, the oldest tree in Costa Rica. It's estimated to be aged somewhere around 400 years old.
Wow, that's got some age.
Which means that somewhere in the Costa Rican jungle, sometime around 1650...
Go on.
Between the months of December to April, when the dry season hits, large woody fruits of a mature kapok tree, possibly 11345 or something,
whatever Dad's name was,
started to split open and drop its seeds. But these seeds, Pete, don't just drop directly to the ground, because thanks to a coating of fluffy cotton-like fibres which coat the seeds, they catch on the wind and then float several kilometres away sometimes, eventually settling on the forest floor. And one of these seeds landed right where Kapok 53113 is standing today.
What a coincidence.
Indeed. Now, the seed either landed on a patch of soil that was warm and moist and bathed in sunlight such that it sprouted immediately, or it didn't.
Those are definitely 2 options.
And it might not have done, because the kapok seeds can actually not germinate for several months, meaning that they just sort of pass time around on the ground until the rainy season comes, at which point the combination of moisture and temperature is such that the seed is activated and its embryonic root, which is called a radicle, starts to anchor the seed into the soil.
Ah, interesting.
Now, at this point, sprouting from the top of the seed, little leaves unfold, and the seedling starts to suck down on sunlight like a solar buffet.
A solar buffet.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
But this is a dangerous time for our tiny little seedling, Pete, because survival is harsh and unforgiving on the forest floor. It had to grow up quickly. It has to outgrow other plants for light and nutrients, and it has to avoid being eaten by rodents and birds and weird little insects. But our seedling is strong, Pete, and it survives against the odds.
I'm backing him.
And it grows about 12 inches, that's 30 centimetres in 6 weeks, and 2 feet, that's 60 centimetres in its first year, 1651. The years pass, and our seedling turned sapling continues to get higher and higher as it stretches towards that distant canopy above. Roots extend out from its trunk and continue deep below ground. At its full height, its mature height, it can get down to 50 meters deep, these roots. Incredibly deep. And that's to help stabilize it because its incredible weight in such shallow tropical soil means that it would fall over otherwise. And within the first 10 years, 1661, the trunk has grown a thick skin of bark on it, right, which helps it survive wildfires. There's a series of large conical thorns which also grow on the bark, and that prevents animals from just nibbling away at it. Its branches stretch out into the air and they become the home for a host of flappies and flowers, and by that I mean orchids and honeybees, bromeliads and bats. 20 years passes. We're now in the late 1600s and the tree is mature. Kapok 53113 is now a proper tree that we would recognise. And it's producing its own flowers. But these flowers are special, Pete, because they are night-blooming flowers. They only come out when the moon's there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah, and they emerge across all of its branches and they produce this strong, musky smell that attracts bats, who are looking for a tasty source of nectar and pollen, and so rummage around in these flowers and accidentally start to pollinate the flowers.
You get pollen on your chops. That's what the tree wants. It's using you, bat.
It is. This is the tree's first foray into sex.
By moonlight, no less.
Now, as the flowers are pollinated, so eventually they turn into thousands of these 15 centimetre, 6-inch woody pods, and they're filled with that same fluffy, yellowish cellulose fibres that, first carried the seed to this spot. And with the tree now focused on reproduction, it stops growing taller and for the next few centuries diverts its energy into having more and more bat sex.
When you put it like that, it sounds wrong, but this is just nature, people.
It's nature, come on. Now, those centuries pass by slowly, Pete, and far down below on the forest floor, the shadow of this massive tree attracts other creatures to it. We got deer and jaguar, but also an indigenous group of humans called the Malaku, and they see this tree as sacred. It's a representation of the physical connection between the earth and the sky, a literal towering passageway for human spirits to journey up from one life to the next. In fact, they refer to the tree as stairs to heaven, and with the passing of their chief, the tribal chief, they would bring the corpse to the kapok tree, lay it amongst the roots, and it would begin its spiritual ascension through the trunk, up to the highest branches, and into the heavens.
I can think of worse ways to be buried.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as the years pass, generation after generation of the Malaku are taught the importance of preserving the kapok, how the tree maintains the balance of nature and ensures the survival and well-being of their people. It's an essential tree in their spiritual life, but also their day-to-day life, because the Malaku also harvest parts of the tree for everyday objects. They use it to make things like kayaks and baskets and, the very huts that they live in. They also use that soft seed fur to fill out their mattresses and their pillows too. But one of the major reasons why the kapok has continued to grow to such an enormous height is because of the decline of the Malaku people themselves. So the Malaku population has declined over the past few centuries due to reasons that you've said: disease, colonization, land encroachment. And during the colonial period, many of these communities, including the Malaku, were displaced and significant changes to the ways of life, including access to the kapok trees. The colonialists described the Malaku as a hostile, active and hardy people who hated the Spanish.
For no reason at all.
Why would they? And perhaps that has helped them tough it out, because where the Malaku once numbered around 6,000 people on Costa Rica, they still survive today. But there's only around 600 of them remaining, making them the smallest tribe remaining in Costa Rica. Oof. Yeah. In fact, they live in an area that is just 11 square miles, of which they legally own only 2 square miles.
Crikey, they probably need to expand a little bit, surely.
Yeah. But as for our Kapok tree, Pete, it has survived through all of these centuries. It survived through nature, it survived through humanity, and in 1989, it was officially recognised as the country's Tree of Peace. It's Arbol de la Paz. So the next time you're in Costa Rica, make your way to the Tenorio Volcano National Park and take a moment to visit the Arbol de la Paz, stand beneath its towering branches and reflect on its 400-year journey and the vital role it's played in maintaining the ecological balance. And if you take a selfie with it, let us know at Pete and Ryan at HHE Podcast or on social media at HHE Podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you've seen this thing. It sounds marvellous. Well, Ryan, I have to say that was blooming marvellous. And here at the base of our sacred Kapok tree, we lay to rest the body of the late Chief Lopez. May his spirit rise up through the branches to join with our forefathers in the sky.
I'm not in the sky yet,
We
guys.
bestow him unto nature for eternity,
Guys,
as nature intended.
Really, I'm feeling a lot better.
May his spirit rest eternal, far, far away.
It's probably just a touch of
Like
heartburn.
really far away.
Seriously, I think it was just from eating the chilies.
His life will always be remembered by our tribe.
Is anyone listening
Together
to me?
we shall treasure his memory.
Hello?
And honour his life.
I've started getting a rash from the leaves down here.
And with a heavy heart, though not too heavy, I
Guys.
reluctantly take on the role of chief of the village.
Guys, it's really itchy.
A role that carries a heavy burden, but also comes with, let's
seriously,
not forget,
guys.
a substantial salary and generous expenses.
Guys, there's been a mistake.
I shall think of him often as I seat myself upon the throne next to his beautiful wife,
Guys.
who I vow to care for as if she were my own.
What?
All right, let's pack it up. Everyone back to the village.
You bastard.
So, Ryan, that was a marvellous job. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but it is time. The ears of the eyes of the audience are swivelling in their nose. It's time to Derzolate, is the point.
It is indeed. All right, let's turn it on. All right, and here we go, Peter. Our place is Venezuela.
Venezuela? Oh, we're still in the same part of the world, roughly, I think, if I know approximately where Venezuela is. Which now I think about it, I'm not sure I do.
Okay, and our time period is... Oh, yeah. It's 1967, Pete. It's the summer of love.
19... Wow, a single year, crikey.
A single year, specifically the summer of love.
Oh, well, I love love.
Okay, and our topic is... darkness.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah. So, we've got darkness in Venezuela during the summer of love.
All right, I'm ready. I'm up for it. I'm here for it.
Find the darkness in love.
I will. I've been training for this my whole life.
Oh, dear. It's funny because it's true.
All right, that is our show for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Now, if you'd like to get in touch about any of the things we've talked about on this show, or if you just want to say hello, you can reach out to us through our website, hhepodcast.com, or you can email us at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you. And you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
And, of course, if you're on Mastodon, Instagram, Facebook, or X, you can find us at HHE Podcast.
And if you subscribe to those, you're going to get an alert every time we post extra content like facts we didn't use, photos from the show, and other bits and bobs.
And, of course, we'll be back again soon with
The verdict.
But until then, a huge thanks to you, Ryan.
And a huge thanks to you, Pete.
And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
History happened everywhere.
Hey Ryan,
Hey Pete,
what day is it?
Tuesday?
Yes, but what is special about today?
I don't know.
Well, it's my mum's birthday, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
And you know how I asked you to order her some flowers for me?
Yeah.
Well, she just called me and she was very confused.
Oh, well, that's just old age for you.
No, Ryan, she's confused because she took delivery of one large box of manure.
Well, that is weird.
Yes, it is, because I distinctly remember asking you to order a bunch of flowers, didn't I? Not a box of poo. So what happened?
Well, funny story. I was going to order the flowers, but then I saw a special deal, and I thought a special mum deserved something special.
Right, and so what did you order exactly?
I don't know. I think it was called the Fun Guy Special or something.
Fun guy.
Yeah, for fun guys. Although I'm sure that includes fun gals too.
Ryan, it's not fun guy, it's fungi. You ordered her a box of poo for growing mushrooms.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and now I'm in the, well, let's just say mum's got a box of it. So get online and buy her some flowers right now.
Righto. Hey, Pete, how do you think she'd like the Costa Rican special?
All right, what's in that then?
It's a beautifully presented bouquet of corpse flowers, which emit a unique foul odour reminiscent of rotting flesh.
Ryan, what the hell?
It says it's on sale.
Ooh,
80% off.
bargain. All right, go for it. Happy birthday, mum.
Oh, look at my tree. It's a giant tree.
I've got a big tree. Oh, it's barking. Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah,
Smash subscribe.
yeah, it's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.